Hey, what's up guys, this is Served, and today I'm going to be showing you guys a great build for maximizing your DPS with Predator's Mark. In this video, I'm mainly referring to fighting NPCs like incursions and whatnot, and not player versus player. You can use this set for PvP. It's not the best, but you still can. Just keep in mind that the context of this video is against NPCs, not other players. Another thing to note is that this is not the best DPS build in the game. I'm not trying to say that it is. Predator's Mark just simply is not good as 3-set striker with 2-set sentry and savage gloves. But if you really like using an assault rifle and this is the only set you can get your hands on, today I'm going to be showing you guys how to take full advantage of it and do insane bleed tick damage. So first off, I'm going to get into the build, the gear, talents, skills, etc. and afterwards I'm going to explain how to maximize your DPS with gameplay and tell you the best way to get your hands on this set. This video took me a really long time to make, so a like would be super appreciated. So let's get right into it. So starting off with my build, before I say anything, obviously my DPS stat is low. That's simply because this stat is broken. I made a separate video on it, but long story short, it doesn't accurately represent your DPS, nor does it take into account gear set bonuses, etc, etc. So starting off, as you can see, I have almost 3k firearm, 334k toughness, and 17k skill power. I like to have a bit more firearms and stamina, but if you like to have 90k plus health, you definitely can go for that. Just make sure that you have at least like 2,579 firearms to get that talent brutal on your weapons, which is the best weapon talent, especially when using an assault rifle. You also don't want to just pour your stats into firearms, because having over 300k toughness will help you to not get like one shot and whatnot, so really make sure you get that. I achieved over 300k toughness by having max armor, which I'll explain how to get later, and having over 80k health. I also have 17k skill power, and I'll get into why I did that in a bit. So starting off with the nitty gritty of the gear, I'm using 4-set Predator's Mark obviously, which gives me 20% optimal range, which doesn't really help with ARs, but it is helpful for SMGs. And then for the 3-set bonus, I get 800 plus assault rifle damage and 700 pistol damage, which actually isn't too bad. Moving on to the 4-set, it reads hit 10 shots without switching targets to make the target bleed for 100% of the damage already done by those bullets. This might sound actually a bit confusing, but basically you have to hit somebody 10 times with your weapon. As you can see, there's a little bullet counter next to your weapon, and if you hit them 10 times without switching targets, it will apply a bleed. If you miss, the counter won't go down actually. It's just that if you start shooting at another target, that's when the counter will start switching to that guy, if you haven't already shot that guy 10 times. So anyways, that bleed will last for 8 seconds, and for every second it will do an average of how much damage you did over those 10 shots. And by the time the bleed is up, it will have done 112% of the damage you did with those 10 shots. I'm not exactly sure why it's 112%, but it is just mathematically figuring it out. Sorry if that sounds a bit confusing, but if you pick up the set and use it, you'll get the hang of it. So since I'm using 4-set Predator's Mark, that leaves me with 2 other pieces, and I went for 2-set Sentry's Call for that extra headshot damage. There's a multitude of things you can actually do with these 2 pieces. You can go for, say, 2-set Tactician's Authority for the 4k skill power, 2-set Final Measure for the 50% exotic damage resilience, and 2-set Striker for the 20% enemy armor damage. It's not a huge deal which one you pick, it's really just up to personal preference and which pieces you have available that fit into your build. I like to have Sentry's Call for the 30% headshot damage because my accuracy is fairly good and I'm able to end headshots pretty consistently, so I like to have the extra flat out damage. So that's my setup. Now I'm just going to go over my weapons and every piece of gear very specifically. So ideally you want to get an assault rifle, because to take advantage of this set you have to alter your playstyle just a little bit, and assault rifles really complement that. In terms of what AR you should go for, I would suggest an LVOA-C. ACRs are pretty decent, so are M4s, and what I have personally is an AK-47. A lot of the ARs are actually pretty good, so just try to find one with the brutal talent on it. And yeah, by far this is actually the best talent you can get, because having a flat out bonus damage like that is just absolutely insane and will make your bleeds tick for a lot more. A few other good talents are Destructive, Self-Preserve, Deadly, Predatory. It's actually broken right now, so it's pretty at MOP. Vicious is pretty good, and so is Fierce if it's only the 3rd talent, so you don't have to get that extra electronics for it. But Brutal is your top priority. If you're worried about the recoil on your AR, getting Capable is very helpful too, as it reduces recoil drastically after using a skill. Now, in terms of modding your AR, for your scope you want headshot damage and crit chance. For your magazine, you want magazine size and weapon damage, definitely not rate of fire. Keep that in mind, the weapon damage is actually way more helpful. For your grip, you want accuracy and horizontal stability, or stability and horizontal stability, whichever you can really get your hands on, doesn't matter that much. And for the muzzle, you want stability and critical hit damage. For your secondary, I really wouldn't suggest using an M1A, because you want to be benefiting, or you won't be benefiting from the bleed, just because shooting an enemy like 10 times with an M1A will probably kill them. So for my secondary, I have an SMG for those close range gunfights. Same talents are good for SMGs like they were for ARs. Now moving on to the gear. For your chest piece, you want armor. You pretty much need that in order to hit armor cap without losing any major stat. I also have a mod slot and damage to elites on it, but you can easily switch out damage to elites for something else if you wish. Now moving on to the mask, we have damage to elites and a mod slot. You can switch out damage to elites for skill power or crit chance if you want to, but I like the extra damage to elites. Just make sure that it has a mod slot. Now for your knee pads, you want armor and crit damage for the majors. You need that armor to hit cap, and for the minor attributes, enemy armor damage is pretty nice and it gives a pretty helpful DPS boost. For your backpack, you want skill power and a mod slot. Feel free to switch out that skill power for crit damage, but I like to have it there so that my overdose actually heals me for all my health. For your gloves, you want crit damage, crit chance, and damage to elites. You can switch damage to elites for assault rifle damage if you want to, but I like to have it there for that extra damage. And for the holster, plain and simple, you just want armor and make sure that it has all the 3 stats. In terms of modding your gear, I have all my mods with stamina or firearms and then armor with them. If I didn't have this, I actually wouldn't be able to hit 75% armor, so make sure you get that. But if you already have armor cap, getting stamina / firearms mods with, say, skill power or crit chance is pretty nice too. Alright, woohoo, that's it for the gear. Moving on to your skills, personally I actually use pulse with tactical scanner for that extra crit chance and crit damage. But if you like to hug cover a lot with your ARs, using a smart cover isn't a bad thing either. And for my second skill, I have first aid with overdose. I actually like this because if I ever get low, I can just use that and get a pretty nice chunk of my health out of it. You can also use booster shot for extra damage and damage resistance if you want. I like to overdose though, but it's up to you. If there's already a bunch of people using pulse or smart cover in your group though, I would suggest using sticky bomb flashbang to stun your targets, but it's really situational and up to your group. Moving on to the talents, a lot of people would say to use the shrapnel talent to be spreading your bleeds, but it actually doesn't work. I've tested this extensively and got no luck with it, which kind of sucks, but anyways, moving on. For the first talent, I have steady hands, which when entering any cover, reduces my recoil by 25% for 10 seconds. The reason I use this is because I have an AK, which has like a crap load of recoil. So if you don't have a recoil problem, then I would say use on the move instead, which actually reduces incoming damage by 10 seconds when you kill a target while moving, which can be pretty helpful. For the next talent, I have precision, which reads headshot a hostile to pulse them for 10 seconds. Pulsing them actually adds a base pulse stat extra damage, so upon headshotting them, one time you get an additional 19% crit chance and 38% crit damage. It's actually great for doing extra loads of damage on enemies when your pulse isn't up, so make sure you get that one. For the next talent, we have one is none, which reads when headshotting hostile, have a 50% chance of not consuming the bullet. This is actually a pretty great talent because if you have good accuracy and are just chaining headshots together, you'll get half of your headshot bullets return to your magazine instantly, letting you shoot more and more before having to reload. It's really the best with SMGs. If you find it's not helping you a lot with your AR, then you can switch it to one of the other good talents that I mentioned. The last talent that I use is Combat Medic, which reads use a medkit near allies to heal group members and proxies within 20 meters by 40%. It might sound shitty, but actually what it does is when you use it even by yourself, it heals you and group members by an additional 40% when using your medkit, making your medkit instantly heal you to full health, which is very helpful. Another good survivability talent is Critical Save, which reads use a medkit during low health to increase damage resistance by 40% for 10 seconds. It's actually pretty helpful. I think getting to full health instantly is a bit more beneficial, but it's really not a big deal. Use whichever you prefer. So that's basically it for the build. Moving on to how to use this set effectively. So in order to maximize your DPS with this set, you want to be like chain stacking your bleed ticks. What I mean by this is shooting one enemy 10 times and moving on to the next enemy, etc, and getting bleeds on all of the enemies that you have in your line of sight. This might sound a little cheap, leaving an enemy alive just for that extra DPS, but with this style of play, I'm mainly talking about when you have a group scenario, and it's actually beneficial to the team to max out how much damage you're doing. You won't always be able to play like this because there won't be 10 enemies to shoot at in your line of sight at all times. So the best way to take advantage of this, I found, is just to sit a little bit farther back than everybody else and just chain your bleed ticks without getting shot at or having aggro. But obviously, if there's only like 1 or 2 enemies there, just shoot them until they're dead. No point in just stacking a bleed and then not shooting at them. But yeah, so a quick side note, this set is actually really good against heavies and guys with shields because you can shoot them 10 times and then gain your distance while still being able to do that damage over time. Just thought I'd mention that. This set is pretty straightforward to use. Those are some helpful tips. Now moving on to the best way to get this set, farm Clear Sky. This stuff drops like crazy from Clear Sky, so if you farm it for a few hours, I guarantee you'll have like a full 4 set of it in no time. Also, challenge mode should be coming pretty soon, so you can get those sexy ass 240 pieces from farming that, which will be pretty nice. But yeah guys, that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this video guys. It took a really long time to make, so if you did, a like would be super appreciated, and subscribe for videos similar to this one. I'll see you later guys.